Good to go? All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 7 of Motivate Me 313's podcast. We are officially live today. We have a very important show for you all today. It's one of those topics that the reason why we kind of started this whole podcast was to, be a community, media company where we can allow conversations to happen that probably you won't hear in other media areas. So that's why we feel we're glad and we're happy that we can host a conversation like this with people who are very knowledgeable and educated on the topic. And the topic is we're going to talk about the current state of Palestine. Before I even dive into that, I want to give a shout out to the people who are here today. So first of all, my sisters, who are usually the co-hosts, are actually in the building today, but they're behind the cameras, behind the scenes, helping out that way. So I do want to give a shout out to my sister Sada and my sister Abir. Of course, you got Yusuf in the back, always, handling his business. Shout out to Muna, our content creator. She is here. And then introducing the guests. So from the right of me, you got Malak. She is here and she's in the building today. So thank you to Malak for being here. Of course, you got myself, Omar T. To the left of me, we have Adam. And then to the left of him, we have Lexis. These three individuals today will be discussing the topics. Again, we're going to be talking about the current state of Palestine. So we're going to dive into everything that's been happening, over the years and up until today. With that said, before we even continue the conversation, I do want to say be sure to follow us on all of our socials. You have YouTube, Oz Media, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok under Oz Media. You can listen to the show later on Apple and Spotify podcasts under Oz Media. If you want to call in, if there's a discussion that you want to have about some of the topics that we're having, the number is 313-306-1750. Again, 313-306-1750. Feel free to call in. I got my phone right here next to me, ready to answer any phone call that you may have. And then with that said, last but not least, we got to give a shout out to our sponsors, Hanley International Academy, Juice Box and Hamtramck, the Balkan House Restaurant, Qahwah House, BC Adhesives, Specialty Medical Center. So shout out to our sponsors. We're going to start off with Qahwah House, Yusuf. We're going to give a shout out to a local company right here in Dearborn, Michigan. So shout out to the Qahwah House. And then after the sponsorship, we will get the show on the road. So again, shout out to Qahwah House. If you're ever in need of some coffee, then you have to stop by the best place in the country. You know what that is, Yusuf?
Yeah, man, it's got to be the Qahwah House.
It's definitely the Qahwah House. It's the first Yemeni coffee shop of its kind. You can stop by Qahwah House to try their famous Yemeni lattes, Adani shahis, mafawad, and jubani coffees. You can also stop by to try their delicious pastries, such as the Yemeni favorite sabaya, everything mini bites, and they even serve sambusas. They have locations in Michigan, New Jersey, New York, and Illinois, with more locations coming to a state near you. So no matter where you're at in the country, be sure to stop by Qahwah House and get a glimpse of what the Yemeni culture is all about. Also, don't forget to download the new Qahwah House app. You can now order your coffee and go, skipping the line entirely. It's like having your own personal barista. So before we actually even start the show, I want to let the audience see and understand who it is that's one of the speakers for today. So Malak, let's start off with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is it that you do and that you've done, and anything you want to mention?
Yeah. So now my name is Malak Silmi. I live in Michigan, based in Michigan, and I'm a journalist. Currently, I'm freelance, and my family is Palestinian. My mom and dad are also Palestinian, and we have family in Palestine and here in the U.S.
Thank you, Malak. I appreciate it. And then to the left of me, we have Adam here. Adam, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Adam Abusalah. I'm born and raised in Dearborn, from Beit Hanina, Palestine. We have some family in the West Bank as well, and I'm just glad to be here to share our story, inshallah.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. And Lexis, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Lexi also grew up in Dearborn, born and raised. My grandparents are from Jaffa, also lived in Ramallah, and I'm also very glad to be here to be able to share some information and really important news and resources on what's currently happening in Palestine.
So we're going to start off with, the backstory. We're going to take it way back from the time where, I guess, Israel became Israel. So can you tell us a little bit about the history between, Palestine and what is now known as Israel, and just, I guess, give us any major events that may have happened from that moment till pretty much, I guess, now till today.
Yeah, so obviously it's over 75 years of history, so it's a lot. It's kind of hard to like simplify that, but I'm going to do my best. But basically it started really back in 1917 and during World War I, once the Ottoman Empire collapsed. That's when the British came in and took control of Palestine. Before that, it was not occupied. Muslims, Christians, Jews lived in Palestine, and it was a country that existed, and it still exists.
And it was Palestine.
It was
That was a name.
Yeah, Palestine is what it's been known. That's what I've known. But ever since the British took over, they kind of signed this thing called the Balfour Declaration, where they promised this land to become a Jewish state. And so since like 1917 to about like 1940s, the British had helped with European Jews to immigrate to Palestine. And we see in 1948 then, like, obviously there's a lot more Jews that are coming from Europe, and they create Israel in 1948. And that creation comes at the backs of a lot of millions of Palestinians becoming displaced, thousands being killed, moved from what we now know as 1948 land, what they call present-day Israel, to the south, to the West Bank, to Gaza, to Jordan, to America. So that's like a quick rundown. There's also the 1967 Six-Day War, and that's when, until that point, like from 1948 to 67, Gaza was not under control of Israel. It was actually Egypt that ran it and held it still. And then during the Six-Day War, Israel took it over, and since then we see what we know today as the occupation of Palestine.
You want to add on anything to that, Adam or Lexis?
I think it was great. I just think a key piece here that's really important is a lot of Jewish people were fleeing Europe at the time because they weren't welcome. And think post-Holocaust and all the tragedies and the atrocities they faced as a group, they came to seek a place. This is how Zionism started. Zionism was a way, what they indoctrinated into their people to believe is that we have to have a state by Jewish people for Jewish people only in order for us to be safe. And what people don't know is that, back to what Malak shared, is when Palestine existed prior to it becoming Israel, Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived together in unity and in peace. And what people don't know is that Palestine, actually, there are Palestinian Jews, there are Christian Jews, and there are Muslim Jews. And so I think a really key piece to this history is that when Zionism was started as an organization, they truly believed in Zionism to be able to create not only a state, but a nationality, or not only a religion, but a nationality of Jews. And there are quite a few. I think it's important to name that, Zionism is not Judaism is not Zionism. But it was this idea that there was a state for Jews and by Jews only that created this tension where they believed in ethnically cleansing our Palestine back in 1948, and which got us to this point today.
And so there are people that actually claim to be Zionist without so there are people that are claiming to be Jewish, and there are people that do claim to be Zionist, is what you're saying as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I know quite a few individuals who are Jewish, and their family is from Israel, and they believe strongly in their Judaism, which they should, and they completely condemn the state of Israel. But you will never find a Zionist that, also strongly believes in their Jewish religion, but also believes in the pro-Israeli state and anybody that believes in the pro-Israel state will also agree with their approach to how to, own a land or have a land at the displacement of our Palestinians. And so I think it's really important to name for people that if people are against the state of Israel, you are not against Judaism. You are against the idea of Zionism, and that it's a space for Jewish people and by Jewish people only.
Interesting. So since then, Adam, I guess you could... Again, this is one of those where I know there's a lot that's going on, but, you can name what you can, and then, Malak and Lexis can add on to it as well. But since then, can you tell us, what are some of the atrocities the people of Palestine have faced, due to the government, IDF, and what's happening now? So, we can go from then till now in a way, if you want to talk about some major moments in history.
Yeah, so over the past 75 years, millions of Palestinians have been displaced from their homes. My grandmother, who's in her late 90s, who lives in Dearborn now, she's one of them who was displaced from her home in 1948. So millions have been displaced from their homes since 1948. Hundreds of thousands have been killed, and every now and then Israel continues to expand, illegal settlements. Right now there's the West Bank in Gaza where they say, Palestinians live, but, right now in the West Bank, there's over 500 checkpoints. Palestinians are controlled. Their every movement is controlled. I was in the West Bank this past summer. We had to go through countless checkpoints just to get to my grandfather's house. When we wanted to enter, Al-Aqsa, we had to go through checkpoints, and we had to, several times I was checked by Israeli soldiers. So for the past 75 years, it's been the same. There's been wars, and there's been, lives that have been taken, children who are being arrested for no reason. That's been going on for the past 75 years. So I think it's important to note, because when they want to talk about unprovoked and, when Palestinians are fighting back, it's not unprovoked. This has been going on for the past 75 years. So it's important to note that, and it's important to know what Israel has done, not just in the past 75 years, but also in the last 10 days. I think.
Yeah, we can dive into that. But just going back to the checkpoint part, though, has there ever been a moment where, you may have witnessed or firsthand or just eyewitness a situation where it was just a normal checkpoint, but, the police went over and beyond what they needed to, I guess, to get to their point? Like, have you witnessed that?
So actually, this past summer when I was in the West Bank, there's at a time we were staying in Jerusalem. My grandfather's house, Allah yarhamah, he is in the West Bank. And we were going from Jerusalem to the West Bank, and it sucked because the home that my father was born in, he had to get permission to go to. And, the Israeli soldiers gave us a certain amount of time. So we had left Jerusalem, and we had taken a bus to get to the Qalandia checkpoint. And when we got there, you have to go up these flight of stairs. And I remember we were going up. It was me and my two cousins, and we were going up, and there was an older lady who had went to Jerusalem, and she had a bunch of bags with her, whether it was from shopping, and she was going up the stairs. An older lady, and I looked at her and I thought, man, this could be my grandmother, and she's going up these stairs, and she was actually leaning against the wall so that she can keep her balance. And while we were assisting her, there was a man on a motorcycle who was trying to get into Jerusalem. So he was coming from the West Bank going into Jerusalem. And, the Israeli soldiers had just stopped him, and they were, searching him, and they, they strip searched him. And then just the harassment that you feel, I'm trying to get into another piece, another part of my country, but I had to get strip searched. And it was then, obviously, I'm Palestinian, so my whole life I've been hearing about these stories. But it was then that I realized, there's so many people that go through this every single day, but we don't know about their stories. Mm-hmm. And it just hit me, and I was like, this is real. Daily harassment. Every single day. There's over 500 checkpoints in the West Bank alone. So this is what people go through every single day. And we hear some stories on social media, and we see some videos and things like that. But the reality is, hundreds and thousands of people go through this every single day. We just don't know their story. So, Lexis, what is happening now? Where are we at right now? October 17th. What's going on today? We heard another hospital just got bombed, over 500 casualties, children, women, men. Give us an update.
I would say where we're at right now is where we've always been. That's what people do not understand, is that what's happening right now is not anything that happened or started on October 7th. Back to what Malak said, this is something that's been ongoing for the last 75 years. And what I would say is the difference is, like I shared earlier in our before the interview launched, is it's a war on information right now. What we're seeing is that, I choose to believe in the good in humanity. I choose to believe in the good in people, and that right now the people are prevailing over the governments, and that you're seeing the reality of what, like Adam shared, this happens to our people every single day. The bombing, the strip searches, the checkpoints. I was watching an interview this morning of a girl who, she's Jewish from Israel. Her family is there. She lived there, and she actually just came back 2 weeks ago. And you could see the sadness in her own eyes as a non-Palestinian, talking about how she witnessed the hundreds of checkpoints that our Palestinians have to go through, the cameras that are inside that are facing directly into their homes, the lack of privacy they get, the constant invasion, and that at any moment as a Palestinian, you never know what's on the other side of your, like, are you going to wake up in the morning? Are you going to be able to go to sleep at night? And I think what we're witnessing right now is that there's an unfortunate reality that any Western countries, anybody that is considered non-Black or non-brown, are constantly facing these dehumanizing headlines, the dehumanizing, the lack of support from our governments to literally see blatantly that Israel can go on national television and talk about taking a siege on Gaza, and we are still deciding whether we want to do a ceasefire. I don't think I need to spend much time discussing what's currently happening, but the simple fact that a group of people are facing collective punishment and nobody has done anything to do a ceasefire or to come save anybody or to be able to de-escalate, or the U.S. could say stop. Our U.S. government can right now say stop what is happening, and they are choosing not to because of our own interests and our own reasons for going in. And that in itself, I think what we've noticed as an entire world is we have failed humanity right now. Nothing is different in Palestine from what happened back in the 1900s to what's happening right now. But what I could wholeheartedly say is that our world has failed us on a human level, and that is sad.
You want to add on to that, Malak? Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, honestly, like knowing also that our own President Biden, is going tomorrow to Israel to show his support. Like he just tweeted this morning, or a few hours ago actually, that he wants to like show the support, like stand with Israel. And then after that, he is planning to go to Jordan to like make sure we can figure out a way to send humanitarian aid. And that's obviously like appalling to hear and see, and that's like one of the reasons why like seeing what's happening in Palestine, like seeing how our own government is a huge player, is important for us to like want to know what's happening, understand it more, and see how we could help. So that's just one thing I wanted to add on, just knowing that this hits home for us. I personally spoke with a lot of people in Michigan who have families right now in Gaza. Actually, one person was supposed to be on the show, but unfortunately, like obviously she's going through a lot right now, but they're telling me like it's their first cousins, it's their grandparents who are in these homes and buildings, and they're evacuating in Gaza down to the south, and we're seeing the videos, we're seeing the graphic videos as well, and it's just knowing that there are neighbors that you have here in Michigan who are trying to get on the phone with their family, and they have no idea what's happening. Like the electricity is off, like there's literally almost no connection back home, and these people are just anxious and they're not sleeping. And if we can't sleep here, if it's hurting us so much here, how do we think they're feeling over there? And it's just to empathize really, and to just try to do something and try to at least learn more about what's happening.
That is the next question, is like, why should people in America care about what's happening over there in Palestine? If you want to add on and piggyback off of what Malak was saying as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, our U.S. tax dollars are funding this genocide. I mean, why should we care? You know, I said this, I was speaking to somebody at the Associated Press the other day, and I said to them that our parents travel from overseas to come here, you know, whether it was seeking refuge from what the terrible genocide that is happening, or for whatever reason, you come to America to pursue a dream, right? But in the name of our dream, we don't forget our diaspora. We don't forget where we come from. We don't, sleep on the country or the land that made us. And we come here because we believe in this idea of freedom, justice, equity, the pursuit of happiness for all. And to be sold a false dream and to be sold a lie by the elected officials that we elected to represent who we are as Americans, I mean, for no other reason, that's why we should care. But to see the own issues that we're facing in our country with homelessness, lack of infrastructure within schools, when you think about our nurses that were struggling in the COVID situations that we've had, so many things that are issues that we face in our own country, and at the drop or the snap of a finger from Israel, we send $10 billion. $10 billion for our tax dollars. Like, imagine our tax dollars that should be going towards our own people are now funding the genocide of others. And then, like, I think back to Malak's point of, like, it's incomparable to what our Palestinians, especially in Gaza, are facing. But to be a Palestinian in America and to have no control over the fact that my tax dollars are funding the genocide of my people, the trauma that puts you through, the back and forth, the things that you can't even imagine. I mean, it's crazy. And not to mention our U.S. citizens that are actually in Gaza right now that are stuck and can't get out. I mean, I believe that every single person should be free from there. But the fact that we are doing nothing to save our U.S. citizens, the fact that we still, Shireen Abu Akleh, that was a reporter, a U.S. citizen reporter, it's just the way that our country shows up when it comes to anybody that is Palestinian. It's sad.
I think, sorry, if I could also mention, like, besides just the fact that the United States is sending so much money to Israel every single year, at the end of the day, it's a humanitarian issue. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we see a squirrel on the side of the side of the road that's dead, like we start saying, oh, we just feel so bad. Of course, we feel bad, but it's like, man, like, mothers are seeing their children dying and they can't do anything, and it's just like, it's a humanitarian issue. And anybody who sees these videos, or earlier today I saw a video of a young boy who was like teaching his younger brother how to say the Shahada, while he's passing away. People who see this and like, how can you not care? Like she said, your tax dollars are going to fund this genocide. And we give so much money to Israel every single year. I think it's like $4 billion every single year that we're sending. And then right now, Biden is talking about sending $100 billion to Ukraine and to Israel. And it's like, it's unconditional. Like, they don't even ask, where does the money go? It's wherever they just give it to them. It's a blank, it's just a check, and they don't hold Israel accountable, and it's just a crazy situation, man.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
Can I add something to what Adam was just saying too? Is remove money out of the equation here, right? Like, remove the way that our U.S. is funding the genocide that's currently happening. Our government has a moral obligation to represent who we are as people, and they have failed on that front. Leaders are supposed to lead and unite, and our leaders of this country are following and failing our people. And I think beyond that, you want to be able to look up to individuals that show what it means to be a person first before anything else. And the fact that we are being led in this country by people who fail to show who fail to show how to care for others, it's scary. It's scary to be in this country and not have leaders that are leading in a way that is driven by morals, by values, by care, by humanity. And to think that we're in a day and age, especially in 2023, to not have that present, it's a scary thought for our people.
I'm so sorry. One last thing too is, when we talk about right now that our elected officials and our Secretary of State, that they have an obligation, period, to do what's right to protect all Americans here and abroad. Right now, the Secretary of State is working overtime to bring Israeli American citizens back home. But there's no mention to over at least 600 Palestinian Americans who are stuck in Gaza. And when our Secretary of State went to Israel the other day, as soon as he landed on the tarmac, he said, "I'm here as a Jew." And he started talking about his ancestral, where his parents came from. And I'm glad you're Jewish, but you're there as our Secretary of State. You're there as the Secretary of State of the United States of America. You represent every single person. So as hard as you want to work to get Israeli Americans back to America, you got to work just as hard to get Palestinian Americans back to America. And it's so disgusting because he won't even mention Palestinian Americans. Mm-hmm. He'll say Israeli Americans and he'll say non-Israeli Americans, mm-hmm. but he'll never mention Palestinian Americans.
And that goes way back to with a lot of them, if I'm correct, where a lot of them, Israeli people don't want to claim Palestinian people as Palestinian people, or just in general, the country of Palestine. They don't want to acknowledge it. And is there like a story behind that, or just because of what you kind of explained from the history from back then?
I think a lot of it lies in like trying to erase us as a people. Like the language we see in Western media, even like coming out of the Israeli military, the Israeli army, like the words they use and how they describe what's happening, and like the denial, all of that is to justify what they're doing, but also to erase us and to not give us a voice. Like the fact that they bombed the hospital, they know they can get away with that, and no one is gonna bat an eye. It's like definition of ethnic cleansing and really the genocide that we're seeing. So it's it's definitely purposeful, and sadly, like, media outlets are feeding into it instead of pushing back and doing their job of fair reporting and, you know, due diligence. So I personally think it's intentional, and the world is just letting it happen rather than, like, again, fact check it and not rely on military and army and spokespeople for apartheid state to speak for the truth of what's happening in overseas.
This is devastating. We're going to take a pause break right quick and run our next ad of today, Yusuf, which is going to be the Balkan House restaurant. We're going to give a shout out to the Balkan House restaurant. We appreciate their support. And we're going to continue this conversation. As I mentioned before, I have YouTube in front of me. I know Iman Ahmed put Free Palestine. If you want to comment something, feel free to comment. Also, you can call in. The number is 313-306-1750. Again, 313-306-1750 if you'd like to call in and share your thoughts on this conversation. Shout out to the Balkan House restaurant, and we'll continue on this conversation.
You know what, Yusuf, man? I'm in the mood for some Balkan food.
Yeah, man, me too.
Well, you know, there's no better place to go for Balkan than the Balkan House restaurant. The Balkan House restaurant is famous for their doner kebab sandwiches. But did you know that the Balkan House now serves breakfast? Did you also know that all their food is 100% halal? There are currently 2 Balkan House locations, one in Hamtramck and one in Ferndale. But they now also have 2 food trucks, so you can book your next party or event with the Balkan House on wheels. If you're looking for a nice place to eat with friendly service and great prices, look no further than the Balkan House restaurant.
And if, by the way, you know, one of the things that you can do to help this cause, obviously donating, and the second thing is just spreading awareness. You know, you hear this conversation. We have 3 Palestinian Americans sitting right here, and they are sharing the truth of what's going on. So if you want to share it and have other people join in on the conversation, that would also be great as well. So my next question, which I know Adam was kind of touching on, having family there, and alhamdulillah, his family is here right now, but you currently, Malak, have family in Palestine. What is that like for them? Tell us what's their everyday looking like. I'm sure there's really no schedule. I'm guessing there's just more so like surviving.
So my family lives in the West Bank. My grandparents, my mom's entire family, all her siblings. She's the only one that's here in Michigan. They're not in Gaza, so alhamdulillah for that. Like, they're not going through those atrocities, so I can't speak for that. But from the families that I have spoken with in Michigan, there's the Abusalah family who I spoke with yesterday. This woman, her uncle's house was destroyed, and she just found out yesterday, and there were at least 24 relatives under the rubble. Last I spoke with, I think 4 to 6 of them were confirmed dead. A lot of them were missing, and they weren't sure if they were dead or alive. This is someone, again, who lives in Michigan. So those are the stories going on in Gaza, like the confusion, the frustration, the not knowing whether your family members are alive. Another girl, she's also from Michigan. Her great uncles, her great aunts live in Gaza, northern Gaza. She said the last time she spoke with them was Saturday, and last she heard they evacuated south, and since then she hasn't heard a single word. So just knowing that you have no idea if they're still alive, you have no idea if they made it to safety, you literally don't know where they are. That's a lot of anxiety that I'm not currently feeling with my own family. Alhamdulillah, they're doing fine. They're in the West Bank, but they have their own difficulties there. That, like we've mentioned, have been happening for the last 75 years. I have cousins who have dropped out from high school because they know that they don't have a future in the West Bank. They're working construction around or like just picking up random jobs because they don't know what their future looks like. When I was also, like Adam said, I was in Palestine this past August, the last 2 weeks, and every time we go, we always see the same things. Like, we see the checkpoints, like he mentioned, we see the atrocities. But this time there was someone from my grandparents' village in the West Bank, near Ramallah, who, this man, they know him, they grew up with him, he went to school with my uncle, he was going to work, and then at the checkpoint, the Israelis have harassed him multiple times. There's a history of it, but this time they accused him of trying to run their soldiers over. And so they shot him, and he died. And he had a 5-month-old and like 4 other children. And his wife was in that village, and they came and they blockaded the whole village. My grandparents stayed inside. We stayed inside. The kids were all let like sent back home. And this is something that's so regular. Like they're so used to it. They're so used to their people that they grow up with, like just randomly getting killed and no one batting an eye. And there's illegal settlements in the area. There are American Israelis who are from New York, who are from here, who moved to Israel because they have this birthright. And they decide to put up camp, like open up a home in the middle of the West Bank in land that is it's illegal for them to live on under international law. And there's these settlements like feet away from my grandparents' house. The first time I went to Palestine, I was 6. It was back in 2006. And there was that settlement that is there today was not there. And every time I go, you can see the progression of the harassment and the violations against my own people. Like, it's so vivid, it's hard to ignore. And the settlers there, like, they have these guns, and they don't even call them settlers. Instead of mustawtanin, which means settlers, they call them musta'mirin, which means occupiers. They don't even use the word settlers because they are occupying this land, they're not settling. So just seeing the everyday, like, really hopelessness is insane. And right now in the West Bank, they're protesting. They're protesting after what happened at the hospital in Gaza specifically, and they're calling actually for the resignation of the president of Palestine, which is Mahmoud Abbas. Mm-hmm. And the Palestinian police is, of course, fighting against their own people. They're shooting our own people, and the Palestinian police, sadly, like, they work for Abbas, and, you know, they're at the end of the day, they're all like they work for Israel. Like, it's a very obvious thing when you go there and you hear this sentiment.
So I got like 2 questions off of that. Let's start off with the occupying of the land. Nobody's saying anything to them.
No.
They just do what they want.
No. Like, there's been reports by Amnesty International, United Nations. Like, there's these reports that at least, like, recognize that these people who live in the West Bank should not be living there. Like, obviously, northern Palestine, which is now Israel, that was taken over in 1948, but West Bank technically under international terms is Palestinian land. However, there are a bunch of mini settlements, and they have running electricity, running water, even though down the street, my grandparents' village, for example, like, their water cuts off a lot, their electricity cuts off a lot, but literally feet away, the settlement there has great schools. It's like blocked off by this wall. They have soldiers outside of their settlement area so that nobody can come and, like, harass them, even though what we've seen and what I've seen is the settlers would come out and they would have their little big guns and they would be the ones harassing Palestinian cars driving by those highways. So it's a scene for sure that's not that nobody really cares about. They're not doing much to change.
And the one thing that I'm gonna be honest with you, as far as news that I've read, I have not heard one thing from the Palestinian president. No. What's going on with him? Like, what is his thoughts on what's going on? Like, is he just quiet and just everyone's for themselves kind of thing? Or, you know, protect yourselves and keep going on with your day? Like, what's going on? Like, what's his statement on what's happening lately?
If anyone wants to talk about that, what I know is he was supposed to meet with President Biden tomorrow, and the last report I saw before this was he is not going to meet with him anymore. I'm assuming that's because of the protests and because of the people, but he's historically, like, he doesn't do much, if that makes sense. Like, I can say this because I live here, but also from what I've seen from family members and people who are there, like, I have people who work for him, like, from my family, because they, you know, that's their income. Like, they have to, you know, work whatever job is available. However, the Palestinians know that they can't rely on him, and honestly, you could say that about all the Arab leaders. Like, it's political at the end of the day. Like, they're not doing what they should be doing.
Anybody want to touch on that, or you just want to just?
I just think our governments have failed our Palestinian people, and it comes down to that. There's, you know, Malak said it earlier that, like, the politics and the power run deep. It runs very deep, and that seems to preside over, like, the people. The power and the politics presides over people at this point, and just our governments, including our own Palestinian Authority, has failed our people of Palestine. Yeah. They always have. They currently do. And to be honest, they probably always will. And it's sad.
Do any of you have, like, extended family or friends that are currently in Palestine that you guys want to dive into that as well, like their stories and something like that?
Yeah, my dad, like, I have extended family that lives, like, Jerusalem, close to the West Bank. But, you know, when you ask that question, my brain immediately went to every single person in Palestine is my family right now. And the amount of texts I've received from friends this week, the amount of times we've cried, the amount of times my heart broke, came back together, broke again. And like, even sitting here trying to talk about it is like, I'm not care. I don't care because I don't have my mother and father there. I care because these are people, and I care because they're all my family. And to constantly hear that these things are happening, the Al-Ahli hospital that just got bombed, and you still have leaders that are silent, and our Palestinians are literally dropping like flies. You asked that question, and I immediately said like this: every single person there is my family, and I have to speak up for every single person there, because who else would? Who else is? If it's not for us, who else is going to do it? And to constantly have to re-talk or rediscuss about the things that they go through to justify the simple fact that we are saying that a ceasefire is required and that we must end the occupation. I shouldn't have to explain that. I shouldn't have to go through the countless times that our people have gone through checkpoint after checkpoint, or strip search after strip search, or this like the number of international law that Israel has committed from way back when that nobody holds them accountable to. It becomes frustrating, and it sucks. It does.
How about you, Adam? Any family or friends over there?
So I'll talk. So we do have extended family in the West Bank, and I have a few friends in Gaza who I've met. Some people who have been fortunate enough to leave Gaza to receive medical treatment, and I've even before these 10 days, it would be very hard to communicate with them. Mm-hmm. But even now, it's like I'll send them a message, and then I'll go to like my Facebook, or I'll go to like my WhatsApp to see if like the 2 check marks got there. And it's people that I messaged days ago, and I just don't see their check marks. So every time I see these videos on Instagram or on social media, I'm like just watching, and I'm like, I just pray to God that I don't see them in like the background. Mm-hmm. And but we're not able to communicate with any of them. My mother's friend, her niece just passed away a few days ago in Gaza. She was killed, and she was telling my mom the same thing. She's not able to communicate with her family, and she wasn't able to communicate with them for a few days. And when she was able to reach them, she had found out that a few days ago their house was demolished, and it was just a picture of her brother just standing on top of the house, like on top of the rubble. And it's like, imagine that for a few days you can't reach your family, and it's like, we don't know that anything happened to them. Did they die? Are they alive? Are we gonna ever hear from them? And that's just the reality of a lot of families across the United States and across the world that are just not able to reach their family there.
I'm gonna just say this just off of quickly. Then there's another comment from Najwa, by the way. I just want to let y'all know the Palestinian people, you guys are some of the strongest people I know. I know a lot of the Arab countries right now, they're all going through it. A lot of them are having their own issues. But, with how long this stuff dates back and the constant, issues that's been going on, you guys are some of the strongest people I know. And, especially for the Palestinian people, I mean, I don't know if this will ever get to them, but, I can't fathom, I can't even empathize what's going on. And it hurts everyone. Just know that it's not just Palestinian people. It's everyone that's watching these videos. I was having a conversation with my sisters, and, we kind of started crying, and when we were just talking about how we were going to do this show. And it just hurts everyone. It's everybody, and it just bothers me specifically because you sometimes just sit there and ask yourself, what can you do? And obviously raising awareness, but you wake up the next day and you feel like it's still not making a difference. And so that's why it bothers you even more. But, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Najwa said, include them in every prayer. Think of them in every thought. I pray that all humanity never lets the people of Palestine down again. Free Palestine. Thank you, Najwa Ali. We appreciate that. Lexis, you were talking about misinformation. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of misinformation being put online. How do we make sure we are consuming factual news and information before resharing it? I'm just gonna give a quick example of how dangerous it can be. You know, especially for those that are like not comprehending this, you gotta understand that, you know, Israel has a lot of partners, and their partners have a lot of influence. And when you have the influence of media, you almost have the influence of the world. So therefore, whenever something happens, if someone were to say something, you would change the opinions of everyone, you know. And that's why it bothers me so much when celebrities and these professional athletes and these organizations are out there making statements, because these athletes and celebrities have hundreds of millions of followers. And that's why what you say is so important. And I'll just give the example of the bombing today. I heard there was a rumor that, you know, there was a quick rumor that it was from, you know, from inside of Palestine that happened. It was a misfire. Like, and the crazy thing is, like, it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. But I'm sorry. I just want to make sure, like, people got to understand that, like, you know, when they can say anything, and probably more than half of the world would believe it. Mm-hmm. Without no fact checking, without the President Biden, we've seen casualties of babies, beheading of the babies, and then he goes back and retracts it. The damage is already done. The damage is already done. When you make a statement like that, which is what everybody's leading off with in their argument now, is like they're beheading babies. Like, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? You know? And I'm sorry, Alexis, but go ahead.
You're right. I think, you know, we call it a war on information. Before I dive into like how do you fact check, is there's a thing called the danger of a single story. If you haven't heard the background of a danger of a single story, I'd highly recommend looking it up. But essentially, the danger of a single story has devastating consequences, and our consequences we're facing right now of the story that's being pushed out by Western propaganda around what they call the conflict, when it's truly an ethnic cleansing and a genocide, is you have Israel feeling empowered to legitimately drop more bombs in 6 days than the U.S. ever dropped. What was it in And so that's the danger of a single story, is you empower people to believe that what they're hearing is true. The danger of a single story, you have Wadia Allah Yarhamo, who just got stabbed 26 times because there's now this heightened Islamophobic anti-Arab rhetoric that's being pushed that's now impacting our communities. And so I say it's a war on information, because as people, you know, I keep going back to moral obligation, because I believe like that's what I drive myself through, is you have a moral obligation to understand what is happening and to learn, be a learner, be a knowledge seeker, and don't react to everything that you hear for the sake of how are you showing up in the world as a person. And so I think for fact checking, anybody in academia would say, like, what are your primary sources versus your secondary sources? And it's hard. I'm not going to deny that. And, you know, I want to say one thing is we often talk about the Israeli occupation of Palestine as complex, and the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, it's very straightforward. It's not complex. What becomes complex, and I will say, is navigating the propaganda out there and understanding what's happening. That does become complex, because again, Israel has so much power that they control the narrative, they control the media. And you do have some primary sources like the New York Times, like, you know, Associated Press, Google, whomever, putting out information that, you know, anybody would find as credible, but it's leading to the danger of a single story of one side. And so I just think, you know, what I think is really important, and I've said this before, is that while our media has failed us, our government has failed us, we can't let our platforms fail us. And we have to use our platforms right now. We have to share. And what I've shared, you know, whoever's watching this, I call on our allies. Like, performative activism is what people love. Now is a time to be a performative activist. Simply share our stories and share our information, because I, as a Palestinian woman, you could imagine that my following in my network is mostly filled with Arab and Palestinians. And so I'm grateful. I don't have a major following on Instagram, but I have a pretty significant following of a diverse network of people. And the amount of information and texts I've received and messages I've got of, crap, like, I didn't know any of this. Like, I'm so thankful for the information you're sharing. And like, I have physically shifted views of people that are now sharing information. And so it's just, I would say, like, you really got to take a moment to fact check, ask yourself, like, is this true? Who are other resources? I truly believe in order to be a whole individual, you have to have people in your corner that don't always have the same views as you to challenge what you're thinking. And so I would just encourage people, like, if you are noticing a lot of your network and your platform sharing the danger of this single story on Israel, and you're not seeing the things that should be named, the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, the humanitarian crisis, and I would encourage you to broaden your network and start to have conversations with people that are challenging your current views.
I'm gonna ask you the same situation, and I'm gonna just quickly just say this before I forget my thought. And another thing, like, you know, you have a journalism background, and I do too. And I remember I had a journalism class, and I asked, you know, my professor this question of, like, you know, and I kept on bothering him about, like, okay, so, like, then who reports on this or who mentions this? And he was like, you know, at the end of the day, these are companies. These are businesses. You know, these media networks, they're businesses. So what is going to get the audience to read what they're writing or reporting, you know? And it's give them what they want to hear or give them what they want to see. So, hey, 80% of the world or whatever, 60% of the world thinks Muslims are, or you know, Arabs are terrorists or bad people. So go ahead and let's, you know, dish out this information. You know, another thing is when you read an article or whenever you read something, there's ways of telling a story too. You know, for example, let's say 1 or 2 Israeli soldiers pass away, but, you know, 300 Palestinian civilians pass away. They'll begin the headline with 2 Israeli soldiers died in a Hamas or whatever attack. You know, and then deep into the 4th, 5th, 6th paragraph, they would mention that the 300, you know, Palestinian people passed away. So it's like, you really have to understand what's going on and to understand why the things that are happening for you to really comprehend what it is that we're trying to say and what it is pretty much every person that's standing up for Palestine is trying to say about this situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to talk more about that point, in school we learned as journalists to be able to be fair and accurate with our reporting, to be factual, to fact check a hell of a lot before you publish anything. But what we're seeing is, unfortunately, a lot of people forget everything they learned in their first course in college, and they just spew the same crap that they hear, like, honestly. And it's very, very unfortunate, because for somebody who is Palestinian American, who is a journalist, I've seen it firsthand. I was in San Antonio working for the San Antonio Express News like 2 years ago, and I've seen it, and it's insane, because with Ukraine, we saw that coverage. We saw the coverage of Ukrainian resistance fighters fighting against Russia, and the media, for some reason, ate it up and was like, resistance fighters doing their thing. But honestly, the same thing is happening in Palestine, and it's like this narrative switch. And when I was in San Antonio, I remember there was a protest against this like huge Zionist event that was happening, and I covered that protest. And unfortunately, I interviewed a lot of voices from that protest, Palestinian voices. Once it went through the editing process and it was published, I was not part of that work, and I was not able to change anything once it was out there. But the Palestinian voices were removed. It was made into a clickbait article to just show that, hey, like, these people are mad. It was very, very, very dehumanizing, and even like the Jewish Voices for Jewish Voices for Peace chapter in San Antonio, like, wrote a whole statement against the article. Like, it was huge, and I met with the editor-in-chief, and he justified it. He just gave me a time to vent to him, really, but there was no change happening. So really, you see this in corporations across media. You see it from CNN, you see it in all of these different media outlets where they act like they listen, but then they don't take it on. And it's very unfortunate, but it's there's so much. I've said so much about this, and honestly, it gets so exhausting. But you just have to, like, see what the news is doing, and you have to, like, follow the right people, to be honest. Like, there are so many amazing Palestinian American journalists who are doing amazing work. There are so many Arab, and there are so many Muslim journalists across the U.S. who are employed at the Washington Post, who are employed at the New York Times, who are working for AP, and they're working for it. You know what I mean? Like, they're doing the work, but unfortunately, there's this, like, larger media, like, acceptance of just taking one side and not being fair or accurate, not fact-checking, just spewing the same military aspects and the same voices that they wouldn't give to Palestinians. So really to be like very critical in what you're reading, to make sure that you're going for sources that are that at least Palestinian journalists in Gaza are telling you, like follow them if anything. Like they're the ones in Gaza right now. CNN, BBC, all of these news outlets don't have anybody in Gaza. It's Al Jazeera that does. It's Mondo Waste, I think I'm saying it right. Middle East Eye. Like these are the platforms that right now are giving our voices a platform. So those who we should follow, those are who we should read and retweet. And what we've seen is a lot of people have been reposting on Instagram and on Twitter and from these citizen journalists that are on the ground. So it's just to be critical in your consumption of news, because they're like Reuters had a journalist that was killed in Lebanon. Isam Abdullah, I think his last name was. And he works for both Reuters and Al Jazeera as a freelance photographer or employed by them, so not freelance. He was a photographer. He was killed by an Israeli explosion. But even Reuters, the platform that employed him, would not say how he was killed and are saying they're asking Israel to investigate it. They're asking the people who killed him to investigate it. So it's just like that same rhetoric of being scared to like just push out the facts when we're taught that that's what journalism is, and it's honestly a failure and it's an embarrassment. Yeah.
And it's sad to say, but I'm gonna circle back around to it being a business. Honestly, like I think that they just look at it like what's going to keep people coming back, and what's going to, like, if we were to do something, what's going to lose,
Yeah.
the viewership. And if people, put 1 + 1 together, they decide to go with what's gonna keep people coming back. A lot of times they're not. You have any comments on this one, Adam? And
I think the only thing I would say is, I think you pointed it out on your Twitter a few days ago. Even the language that they'll use when like Palestinians are murdered, they'll say like, "Oh, Palestinians died." But when an Israeli soldier was killed, they'd say, "Oh, he was murdered." And it's just the language that they use is just like they're driving that divide, and the way that the media has just been so one-sided. I think like a difference between now and 20 years ago is that there's people on the ground who are able to record what's going on.
Yeah.
And you know what? You can't say that's fake.
Yeah.
And they're posting that, and people are sharing it. Like they said, the problem is you got these social media companies who are trying to like limit what people can see, and it's called just like shadow ban or something.
yeah, shadow ban, censorship.
And censorship, and it's like I say alhamdulillah that we have those people on the ground who are able to show us what's really going on.
Alhamdulillah, for sure. We're gonna take another break right quick. Thank you for this conversation to all three of you. You guys are doing an amazing job. Our next shout out is going to be Juicebox Yusuf. So shout out to Juicebox and Hamtramck. We appreciate them and their support. And we're going to continue on with this show. Feel free to shoot away the questions. I have the iPad here. I got the phone here if anyone wants to call in. So let us know. Juicebox.
All right, Yusuf, I want you to envision this with me, okay? Imagine you just had a long day at work, and all you want is a nice, cool, refreshing drink to top it all off. Do you know where you stop by at, Yusuf?
It's gotta be Juice Box.
It's definitely Juice Box. If you're looking for a place with the best smoothies, milkshakes, ice cream, cereal bars, and slushies, then Juice Box is your one-stop shop. You can try things like their Biscoff or Nutella shakes, crepes, watermelon blast, strawberry burst, or mango smoothies. And if you're looking for a place to hang out, they have a comfortable outdoor patio/courtyard area that you and your friends can enjoy while trying those delicious drinks. So be sure to stop by Juice Box. They have a Hamtramck location right there on Joseph Campo, with more locations coming soon. You'll be sure to leave there with a big smile on your face. You'll also be able to order your drinks from the new Juice Box app, which will also be coming soon. It will be downloadable on all of your smartphone devices.
All right. So, Lexis, can we talk about like some of the war crimes that are happening in Palestine right now, and people may not know about them?
Yeah, I would say if anybody's been following what's happening, the first things first is cutting off any humanitarian aid to any of our women, children, or men for this matter. No food, no water, no electricity, which I would also like to point out. Often people talk about how like Palestine is not an occupied territory, but the fact that Israel can cut off their water at any moment, I don't know of any place or any non-occupier that can do that. And so I think want to acknowledge that first. The white phosphorus bombing, we know that that's it's been stated that anybody in war cannot use that, particularly on, at all, but particularly on civilians. The carpet bombing that's happening, the mass evacuation that was ordered, and giving anybody in Gaza 1 hour to travel from the north of Gaza to the south of Gaza, which, if anybody knows, Gaza is the most densely populated place in the entire world. And so to take the Gazans in northern Gaza and ask them to move to the south, and then the strike that happened today from an Israeli airstrike that bombed the Christian hospital, which also would love to name that there's this rhetoric that it's a religious war. I'm a Christian Palestinian. Most people don't know that, and I've stood in allyship alongside my Muslim Palestinian brothers and sisters, and I would say Zionism knows no hate. Anybody that is Palestinian, you are a target. And so I think this speaks to volumes of how there is no, Israel acts with no fear because there is no accountability. And the number of war crimes that have been violated, the Israeli, the settlements, they call them settler colonial. They call it settler colonialism because there is rules around where they are allowed to settle and not settle, or in this case, I should say occupy and not occupy. And they continue to do it because there's not even a slap on the hand for them. It's actually, here's more money, here's more ammunition, here's more aid. They're rewarded for these war crimes. And so, yeah, I don't know if anybody else has anything to add, but I think it's sad.
Adam, I was going to ask, we kind of talked about what's going on. Obviously, we're just an hour and 15-minute show. We can probably talk about this for weeks and months on, but how can people here support people back home in Palestine, and what can people do over here?
I think there's a few things that people can do. Obviously, number one is spreading awareness. Don't think that you're annoying your followers by just sharing. It's okay. Share as much as you can so people know what's going on overseas. The second thing too that people think is difficult to do, but it's not, is hold your elected leaders accountable. You can call them, call their offices, send them a letter, send them an email, tell them how much, how concerned you are about their lack of support, about, their one-sided treatment to what's going on. When you open your Twitter or you open your social media, and even right now with, for example, like you said today, the hospital that was bombed, you look at your social media and these elected officials are just talking about Israel and their steadfastness, their support for Israel and how, they love Israel. But there's no mention of what's going on in Gaza. There's no mention of the Palestinians that were killed. There's no mention of the over 1,000 children who were killed. Call your elected leaders. Call your elected officials. Call their office. Tell them, listen. Let them know how you feel, and you can do that. Don't think that you can't. You vote for these people. Your tax dollars pay for their salary. Call them. So spreading awareness. Calling your elected officials, leadership. Obviously, if there's a protest or something, go out. Stand in solidarity with people who are facing this. And the last thing that I'll say, and I know Malak has talked about this a lot, is pray. Don't never doubt how powerful your prayers can be. Whoever you pray to, pray and just keep them in your thoughts and in your prayers. But we know that, like in Islam and in Christianity teaches and Judaism teaches that we rely on God and we pray, but you always have to take the means too.
Did you want to add on to that or anything?
Yeah, I would echo that. Like, seeing the videos coming out of Gaza, like, one thing that at least the Muslim Palestinians I've seen, and I'm sure Christians as well, is their conviction in God and their strength is really inspiring. Like, having that conviction that Allah is the only person that's on our side. Like, He is the one that could save us. And they're sick of the fact that nobody else is listening. Like Adam said, like, dua is so important. I know Michigan Ummah has an event this Friday. Like, a lot of people in Michigan know of them. A lot of other masajid have been doing things. I know there's a vigil yesterday. There's a lot of things that you could do in a spiritual sense that you can help in those private spaces make dua. But also, like, when it comes to politics, there was a bill that was introduced to call for a ceasefire by Representative Cori Bush and a lot of people. So like Adam said, calling your representatives, seeing these people who represent you, make sure that they actually represent you in the government level as well.
Lexis, did you want to add on to anything of that, or just kind of pick?
I would agree. I think also definitely prayer. The Basilica of St. Mary posted on their page saying a prayer for all the atrocities that are happening in Palestine right now. So definitely agree. I would say, people, there's often been a thing around like posting around the Israeli occupation of Palestine that people they're afraid. And I've been in conversation with several people that we're friends, question whether we're still friends, but they're just like, I'm afraid to post. I have a job, I have whatever. And, while I get it from that perspective, I've shared like, this is something I am willing to lose anything and everything for, because I believe in, the right for Palestine to have rights to self-determination and freedom. I believe in their right to live. Mm-hmm. And so what I would urge people to think about as you engage in this, and it's not anything that's going to die tomorrow, this is going to happen for the next couple weeks, is I truly believe in the depths of my heart that Palestine will be free and that Palestine will prevail, and that years from now someone is going to ask individuals, what side did you stand on? And when you have to say that you stood on the side of silence, that is something that you're going to have to reckon with yourself. And I think there's no other like punishment to have to deal with the idea or the concept that you stood silent when 2 million people were on the brink of extinction. It sounds dramatic, but like 2 million people are literally on the brink of extinction, and you did nothing. And so I just want to put that message out there that you really have to consider what moral role you're playing in this, and that people should really think about, I said to somebody the other day, I'm afraid of losing my job. I'm afraid of losing my paycheck. I'm afraid of losing friends. But that's incomparable to the idea of my Palestinian people being afraid to lose their lives right now. And it doesn't compare.
This can be a lot for people, even for people that are here in America. Is there like support groups? I know there's prayer groups. I know that in Michigan Ummah, you said is doing something on Friday. Like, is there a thing where people can call, or like just things that are happening for them? And then, I don't know if it was mentioned, but I'm sure donating money as well for Palestine and to the organizations that are happening there. I don't know if that was mentioned or not, but obviously there's a lot. If you want to mention like specific names of organizations as well, like let's start off with maybe if you know of any like support groups or things that are happening for the people that are here, because it's a lot. It's a lot to grasp, to take in too.
Yeah. So from what we've been seeing, obviously there's no humanitarian aid that's being allowed into Gaza, but some organizations do have offices in Gaza, and they have used their donations to bring people more food, to bring people water, supplies that they need, but a lot of them are restricted right now from sending anything. Mm-hmm. So I know that's a huge thing, but a lot of them are still collecting donations so that the second they can help, they would be the first there. I know there's the Palestinian American Medical Association that is collecting money for medical supplies. I have a relative who works closely with them in Toledo. He goes almost every year to Gaza as a doctor. There's a Palestinian Children Relief Fund that also has offices there, and has, even in Michigan, like they brought a lot of Gaza children here to help them with medical injuries and that kind of thing. And then I know there's UNRWA, the UNRWA, which also has offices there and is collecting money. So those are the ones that I could know of.
Does anybody else have anything else they want to add on to that right now?
No, I would just share that those three organizations are very credible. Like she said, they're on the ground. They're in Gaza. Unfortunately, they do have limited resources now, but hopefully, inshallah, once they're able to get some aid into Gaza, I know that they're on the ground. PCRF is an organization, obviously, that I strongly believe in, and the reason for that is they've brought children from Gaza to Michigan and to other states throughout the country, and just recently, Saleh was here. Saleh's from Gaza. He had lost his leg in 2021 due to a bombing. And he came here and he was able to get a prosthetic leg, and he was just sent back to Gaza. And he was actually one of the people too that I've tried to reach out to, and I know my nephew has talked to his father, and we've tried to reach them. Unfortunately, we've had no luck. Hopefully, inshallah, soon that we can talk to them. But that's definitely an organization that's on the ground. I know within the first few days they emptied out their warehouse with the limited stuff that they had. So, that would definitely be one thing.
All right, so this is I'm hoping that we can get an answer from all three of you. So this is the point where, it's called the Motivate Me 313 minute, where we try to, give advice for whatever the topic that we're discussing. So, in this moment right now, imagine that, you have a chance to speak to the Palestinian people. What would you say to those people? Lexis, I was going to start off with you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You said it, and anybody that knows me, when I'm emotional, I'm a writer. I write often. And my brain immediately went to, I wrote like an open love letter to Palestine the other day. I can read a piece of it if that's okay.
You can read all of it, honestly.
It's too long to read all of it. It'll take me a couple minutes. I just said to my Palestine, thank you for teaching me what it means to stand tall in the face of adversity. To my Palestine, thank you for showing me to appreciate the things in life we always take for granted. To my Palestine, you are the true form of God's love. The ones who have endured endless trauma, yet you wake up every day believing in the good of people, that one day, just maybe one day, your freedom will be granted. To my Palestine, you continue to dream, even when the world tells you don't deserve to dream at all, for those dreams give you something to hold on to. To my Palestine, you are the roses that grow through concrete. You are not a statistic. You are not a number. You are not a barbaric animal or subhumans. And while you are physically confined to an open-air prison, your willingness to live for the preservation of our culture, it soars far beyond the walls created to control us and the media designed to silence us. To my Palestine, while they train and try to break down with bombs, know that you heroes are built up in our eyes with your bravery. My Palestine, you are air, you are water, you are the bluest sky, you are Haifa, you are Jaffa, you are Sheikh Jarrah in Gaza, and you are every other village that builds our homage in between. You are always the happiness that you believe resides on the other side of your freedom, even when you don't know if you will ever be free. My Palestine, to me, you are victorious, always have been, always will be, and please know and understand to the entire world that is always free Palestine until Palestine is free.
That was amazing. Thank you, Lexis. I appreciate that so much. Adam, same question to you. If you can, if you want to say something if you had a chance to speak to all the Palestinian people, what would you say to them?
I'm not gonna do that because it's obviously very emotional for a lot of people. But I would say that one thing that the people of Gaza and the people of Palestine have taught me is regardless of what they're going through, they've been through so much. Like I said, you see videos of parents losing their children, and just children, losing their parents, and they just can't do anything. But they're so faithful. They have so much faith. They believe in God so strongly, and it's just amazing to me. So Allah yahmikum, inshallah we get to see you all one day in a free Palestine, and we get to have dinner together in Gaza and sit on the beach, inshallah.
Inshallah. Malak?
I would echo the same things Lexis and Adam have said. I would say that I'm really sorry that this is the world we live in. But I envy that hope and that strength that they have, and I don't think that we should become hopeless. We know that Palestine will be free. Hopefully we see it within our lifetime. If we don't, inshallah, our children's lifetimes, our grandchildren's lifetimes. So really that we'll continue to be strong and continue to make sure that our voices are heard and make sure that the people of Palestine voices reach from the ends of the earth, like from each point of the earth, and just know that the diaspora is still just as strong, and we hope to become even stronger, inshallah, and bring in more allies.
Inshallah. Well, for those that are watching, if there's something, hopefully you learned something from this conversation today. Hopefully you understand that, some of the stuff that you may have been hearing from other news articles or news sites, that it may not be true, or you may not have heard the whole truth. And so thank you today to, we got Malak, to Adam, and to Lexis for coming on today and, having the courage to come on today. And I know their heart is aching, and it's not easy to even have this conversation. And so, for all three of you, I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing this conversation and having the opportunity to hear your stories and just to hear it from actual Palestinian people is definitely important for those viewers out there as well. So thank you again. Before we give our final word, I do want to say again, this was season 3, episode 7 of the Motivate Me 313 podcast. If you are watching this, obviously sharing it, liking it, and subscribing, it would be great. You can follow us on all of our socials. You got YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok on the Oz Media. If you want to listen to the show later, it will be on Apple and Spotify podcasts under Oz Media. We want to give a shout out to the sponsors as well: the Balkan House, Juice Box, Qahwah House, BC Adhesives, Specialty Medical Center, and Hanley International Academy. Thank you so much for their support. Any final words and final comments from anyone that you just want to say? Anything that we may have missed from our end?
I just would say thank you for having this discussion and platform to educate people who may not be educated. Yep, thank you.
Welcome, of course. It's our duty. It's our duty.
Echoing the things. I mean, these platforms are not easy to give, considering, the tension with where our country stands and what's happening. And so I'm forever indebted to the people that are showing up as allies and showing up in full force without question.
I'm just telling you right now that it's our duty to be doing this kind of things. Like, this is who we are. We should all be one. This is something that it just bothered me. Like, if you talked to me 10 years ago, I'm one of the other people in the world that, you feel bad, and you just kind of like go, like the day happens. But like, I don't know if it's maybe just getting older and being more mature, and I don't know what it is, but honestly, like it's hitting harder now these days. And it's like, you have to do something. You got to want to do something. And you put everything to the side and you stop what you're doing. And like Lexis is saying, like, you never know where this can go. And it's to the point where, like, I don't even care. Mm-hmm. You have to, like, at some point, you got to put your foot down and say, this is what's going to happen. And whatever happens afterwards, it is what it is. As long as you stand for what you believe in and you believe it's right. So thank you all for tuning in. The great thing about this is that it will be here and you can still share it later. If you didn't watch it live, you can tune in later. And like I said, you can listen to it later on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Thank you to everyone in the back that also helped out executing this show. We appreciate you. We'll be back again next week. Have a great rest of your day. And always, forever, free Palestine, free Palestine.